The acrid smoke of burning metal filled Dante's lungs as he picked his way through the twisted wreckage of what had once been a magnificent starship. His combat boots crunched over shattered crystal and bent alloy as emergency lights flickered weakly through the haze. The ship's exotic design was unlike anything in the human fleet, all flowing curves and organic-looking technology that seemed to pulse with fading life. Then he heard it, a soft whimper echoing through the devastation, pulling him deeper into the maze of destruction. Dante's hand instinctively moved to his sidearm, but something about the sound made him pause. It wasn't threatening. It was pain, pure and vulnerable. He rounded a collapsed bulkhead and froze completely. There, huddled against a section of intact wall, sat the most extraordinary being he had ever seen. Her skin was a luminous silver that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, and cascading waves of midnight blue hair framed a face of impossible beauty. When she looked up at his approach, eyes like liquid starlight met his brown ones, wide with fear and confusion. "Easy there," Dante said softly, his voice rough from smoke but gentle, as he knelt beside her. His trained gaze quickly assessed her. Injuries. A deep gash across her shoulder, where her flowing garment had been torn, revealed more of that mesmerizing silver skin. "You're hurt pretty bad." She spoke then, her voice like music even through the pain, but the words were alien to him. The melodic language flowed over him like water, beautiful but incomprehensible. When she saw his confusion, tears began to track down her perfect cheeks. Dante pulled a medical kit from his pack, his movements slow and deliberate to avoid startling her. "I know you can't understand me," he murmured, cleaning the wound with practiced efficiency, "but I'm going to help you. I promise." Her large eyes followed his every movement, and when he began to bandage her shoulder, she placed her hand over his. The touch was electric, sending shivers through both of them. Her skin was warm and impossibly soft, and Dante found himself staring into those cosmic eyes longer than was strictly professional. The sound of approaching voices shattered the moment. Harsh alien words echoed through the wreckage, growing closer by the second. The woman's eyes widened in terror, and she grabbed Dante's arm with surprising strength, pulling him deeper into the shadows. "Hide," she whispered in accented but understandable human standard. "They kill survivors." Dante pressed himself against the twisted metal beside her, his broad frame shielding her smaller form as armed figures moved through the wreckage. Her body was warm against his side, trembling with fear and pain. He could feel her rapid heartbeat through the thin material of her garment, and the exotic scent of her hair filled his nostrils. The patrol passed without detecting them, but neither moved immediately. In the darkness, pressed close together, something had shifted between them. When she finally lifted her head to meet his eyes, the fear had been replaced by something else entirely. Trust, gratitude, and an electric awareness that made the air between them crackle with possibility. "What's your name?" Dante asked quietly, his lips close to her ear. "Serafina," she replied, her accent turning the syllables into something musical. "And you are a strange human to risk yourself for an enemy." "Are you my enemy?" he asked, studying her face in the dim light. Her smile was radiant, transforming her features completely. "I think not." As they prepared to leave their hiding spot, Dante helped her to her feet, his hands lingering at her waist longer than necessary. She swayed slightly from blood loss, and he steadied her, pulling her close against his chest. The contact sent heat racing through both of them. "We need to get you to safety," he said, though part of him wanted to stay in this hidden alcove forever, holding this incredible woman who had somehow turned his world upside down in mere minutes. Serafina nodded, but as they prepared to move, she caught his face in her hands. Her touch was feather-light, but it burned like fire. "Thank you, Dante," she whispered, somehow knowing his name, though he hadn't given it. for seeing me as more than just an alien. The journey through this wreckage was treacherous, but Dante's military training served them well. He guided Serafina through the safest paths, his arm around her waist, supporting her weight as she fought through pain and exhaustion. Every step brought them closer together, their bodies moving in unconscious harmony. When they finally emerged from the crashed ship into the pale dawn light, both were breathing hard from more than just exertion. The landscape around them was devastated, scarred by the ongoing war between their species. But in this moment, none of that seemed to matter. Serafina turned to face him fully, her silver skin glowing in the morning light. Her garment had been further torn during their escape, revealing the elegant curves of her form. Dante tried to look away respectfully, but she placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. "Your people and mine," she said softly. "They fight because they fear what they do not understand. But you are not afraid of me. Should I be?" Dante asked, covering her hand with his own. Her laugh was like silver bells. "Very afraid. I am told I am quite dangerous." Looking at her standing there in the dawn light, wounded but defiant, beautiful beyond description, Dante believed it completely. But it wasn't the kind of danger that made him want to run. It was the kind that made him want to stay forever. "Good. Thing I like dangerous," he said with a grin that made her pulse quicken. The distant sound of aircraft forced them to seek shelter, but as they ran together across the broken landscape, hand in hand, both knew that something profound had changed. Whatever came next, whatever obstacles their peoples might place between them, this connection was real and powerful, and worth fighting for. In the growing light of day, with the beautiful alien woman beside him and hope blooming in his chest. For the first time in years, Dante began to believe that maybe, just maybe, love really could conquer all. Even war, even the vast distances between worlds, even the seemingly impossible differences between human and alien hearts. Behind them, the wreckage of Seraphine's ship smoldered in the dawn, but ahead lay possibilities neither had dared to imagine. Together, they would face whatever came next. Together, they would write a new story among the stars. The abandoned mining facility offered them temporary shelter from the search patrols that crisscrossed the devastated landscape. Dante had found it using his tactical knowledge of the region, while Seraphine's intuitive understanding of energy signatures had helped them avoid the sensor sweeps that would have meant certain death. Inside the darkened corridors, lit only by emergency lighting that cast dancing shadows on the walls, they finally had a chance to truly look at each other without the immediate threat of discovery. Serafina moved with fluid grace, despite her injuries, her silver skin seeming to absorb and reflect the dim light in mesmerizing patterns. "Your wound needs proper attention," Dante said, gesturing to her shoulder, where blood had seeped through the makeshift bandage. "Let me help you." She nodded, settling onto a salvaged crate while he retrieved more medical supplies from his pack. As he worked, cleaning and rebandaging the gash, she studied his face with those incredible starlight eyes. His touch was gentle but confident, and she found herself drawn to the quiet strength he radiated. "You are not what I expected from a human soldier," she said softly, her accent making every word sound like poetry. "What did you expect?" Dante asked, his hands working with practiced efficiency while trying to ignore how her proximity was affecting him. "Brutality, hatred. The propaganda of my people speaks of humans as savage destroyers." Her fingers traced along his jaw as he worked, making him pause. "But your hands are gentle. Your eyes hold kindness." The simple touch sent electricity racing through Dante's system. When he looked up and met her gaze, the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken desire. "Maybe your people have been listening to the wrong stories," he said, his voice rougher than intended. As the hours passed in their hidden refuge, they began to share more than just words. Serafina showed him how her people communicated through touch, her fingers dancing across his palm in intricate patterns that conveyed meaning beyond language. Each contact sent waves of sensation through both of them, building a connection that transcended the physical. "This means trust," she whispered, tracing a spiral on his wrist that made his pulse race. "And this," her fingers moved to his chest, over his heart, "means connection of souls." Dante caught her hand in his, pressing it firmly against his chest where she could feel his racing heartbeat. "What does this mean?" he asked, covering her hand completely with his own. Her smile was radiant and shy at the same time. "It means you feel what I feel." The temperature in the facility had dropped with nightfall, and they found themselves sharing body heat for warmth as much as comfort. Serafina curled against Dante's, sighed, her head on his shoulder, while his arms encircled her protectively. The intimacy of their position was not lost on either of them. "Tell me about your world," Dante said quietly, his breath stirring her midnight hair. "Luminara is beautiful," she replied, her voice dreamy with memory. "Cities that float among the clouds, forests that sing with bioluminescent music, oceans that reflect the light of 3 moons. Her voice grew sad. "But the war has changed everything. Fear has made my people forget how to trust, how to love." "Love?" Dante's question was gentle but pointed. Serafina turned in his arms to face him, their faces inches apart in the dim light. "My people believe love should only exist within our own kind. That to feel attraction for another species is wrong." "And what do you believe?" he asked, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. Instead of answering with words, she leaned into his. Touch, her eyes closing as she savored the warmth of his skin against hers. When she opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears and unspoken longing. "I believe," she whispered, "that the heart knows no boundaries." The kiss was inevitable, soft and tentative at first, then growing more passionate as they discovered that their differences only made the connection more electric. Her lips were impossibly soft, and she tasted like starlight and exotic flowers. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "This is dangerous," Serafina whispered against his lips. "The most dangerous things usually are," Dante replied, pulling her closer. "But some risks are worth taking." They spent the night learning each other's touch, each other's responses, building a physical and emotional connection that neither had thought possible between their species. By morning, something had fundamentally changed between them. They were no longer just 2 beings thrown together by circumstance. They were partners, lovers, 2 hearts beating as one despite the vast differences in their origins. When dawn broke, and they had to leave their sanctuary, they moved as one unit, their bodies in perfect synchronization. Seraphine's alien senses complemented Dante's human intuition, creating a partnership that was greater than the sum of its parts. But their newfound happiness was short-lived. As they crested a ridge overlooking a valley, they saw the massive encampment below. Both human and lunar forces had converged on the region, and the sight of the 2 armies facing each other across the scarred landscape drove home the reality of their situation. "My people," Serafina breathed, pointing to the elegant spires of the Luminar Command Center. "They have come looking for me." "And mine are preparing for another battle," Dante observed grimly, noting the human artillery positions and defensive barriers. They stood together on the ridge, hands clasped tightly, both understanding that their brief paradise was about to be tested by the harsh realities of war and politics. Below them, 2 civilizations prepared for conflict, unaware that the hope for peace stood watching from above, embodied in the impossible love between a human soldier and an alien princess. The confrontation came sooner than either had hoped. As they descended toward the valley, they were intercepted by a joint patrol, human soldiers flanking luminar warriors in an uneasy temporary truce. The looks on their faces ranged from suspicion to outright hostility as they took in the sight of Dante and Serafina together. "Princess Serafina," called out Captain Nexus, the leader of the Luminar warriors, his melodic voice cold with disapproval. "Your father has been searching for you. And you," his luminous eyes fixed on Dante with undisguised hatred, "human, will answer for your crimes against our people." "What crimes?" Dante stepped protectively in front of Serafina, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. "I saved her life." "You kidnapped a member of the royal family," snapped Colonel Martinez from the human side. "Do you have any idea what kind of diplomatic incident this creates?" Serafina moved to stand beside Dante, her chin raised with royal authority despite her torn clothing and bandaged shoulder. "No one kidnapped me," she declared, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command. "This human saved my life when others would have left me to die." The patrol exchanged uncertain glances. It was clear they had expected to find a hostage situation, not the obvious bond between the two survivors. Captain Nexus studied their joined hands with growing alarm. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "you have been through trauma. Perhaps you are not thinking clearly about the situation." "My thoughts have never been clearer," Serafina replied firmly. "Dante risked everything to protect me. He showed me that the stories we tell about humans are wrong. They are not monsters. They are capable of the same love, the same sacrifice, the same nobility as any Luminar." The escort to the command center was tense, with soldiers from both species watching every interaction between Dante and Serafina with suspicious eyes. But neither of them tried to hide their connection. When Serafina stumbled from exhaustion, Dante was immediately there to support her. When hostile glares became too intense, she moved closer to his side in a gesture of solidarity that spoke louder than words. The Joint Command Center was a marvel of improvised cooperation, human technology, interfacing with Luminar biosystems to create a functional, if uncomfortable, alliance. At the center of it all sat two figures that commanded instant attention. General Harrison, a grizzled human veteran with steel-gray eyes, and Empress Celesta, Seraphine's mother, whose beauty was legendary even among a species known for their ethereal appearance. "Serafina," the Empress rose gracefully, her voice carrying both relief and reproach. "My daughter, we feared the worst when your ship was shot down." "Mother," Serafina moved forward, but kept Dante close beside her, "I want you to meet the human who saved my life. Dante, this is Empress Celesta of Luminara." The Empress's starlight eyes took in Dante's appearance, noting the way her daughter unconsciously leaned toward him, the protective stance he maintained, despite being vastly outnumbered. "So," she said quietly, "this is the human who has captured my daughter's heart." General Harrison stepped forward, his expression grim. "Sergeant Dante Rodriguez, you're facing serious charges. Violation of the non-fraternization protocols, potential espionage, unauthorized contact with enemy leadership." "With respect, sir," Dante replied, his voice steady despite the odds stacked against him. "She wasn't the enemy when I found her, bleeding in that wreckage. She was just someone who needed help. And now?" Empress Celesta asked, her penetrating gaze moving between them. "What is she to you now?" Dante looked at Serafina, seeing the hope and fear warring in her beautiful features. This was the moment of truth, the point where they either fought for their love or lost it, forever to the pressures of their respective worlds. "She's everything," he said simply, "worth any risk, any sacrifice, worth changing the universe for." Seraphine's smile was radiant as she stepped closer to him, her hand finding his. "And he is my heart," she declared to the assembled leaders. "The proof that love can exist between our species, that we don't have to be enemies forever." The silence that followed was deafening. Then General Harrison spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of command decisions. This creates an impossible situation. Our governments barely trust each other enough for this temporary ceasefire. A romantic relationship between our people could destroy any hope of lasting peace. Or, Empress Celestis said thoughtfully, it could be the foundation for something greater. All eyes turned to her in surprise. The Empress moved with fluid grace to stand before Dante and Serafina, studying their joined hands with ancient wisdom in her eyes. In our oldest legends, she continued, it is written that peace will come not through conquest, but through union. Two hearts bridging the void between worlds. She looked directly at Dante. Human, do you understand what you are asking? To love a Luminor princess is to accept responsibility, not just for her happiness, but for the future of both our species. I understand, Your Majesty, Dante replied without hesitation, and I accept that responsibility gladly. And you, my daughter? The Empress turned to Serafina. Are you prepared to abandon the comfort of your royal life for an uncertain future with this human? I would abandon everything for him, Serafina answered immediately. But I hope instead that we can build something new together. A future where our children grow up in a universe where love matters more than the shape of someone's ears or the color of their skin. The decision, when it came, surprised everyone. General Harrison and Empress Celesta exchanged a long look, some communication passing between them that transcended species barriers. Very well, the Empress announced. Let this be our experiment in peace. Serafina and Dante will be our ambassadors to each other's worlds, living proof that cooperation is possible. But, General Harrison added sternly, any sign that this relationship is being used for espionage or political manipulation, and it ends immediately. As the formal proceedings concluded and the various officials dispersed to implement this unprecedented decision, Dante and Serafina found themselves alone together on an observation deck overlooking the valley where two armies had been prepared for war, but now began the slow process of standing down. So, Dante said, pulling her into his arms as the twin suns of this world began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Ready to change the universe? Serafina laughed, the sound like music in the evening air. With you, I'm ready for anything. Their kiss as the stars began to appear was witnessed by soldiers from both species, and for the first time in generations, instead of reaching for weapons, they simply watched in wonder as love proved stronger than fear, hope more powerful than hatred. In the months that followed, as Dante learned the flowing language of Luminara and Serafina, discovered the passionate intensity of human emotion. Their bond became a symbol of possibility for countless beings across the galaxy. Their wedding, held on a neutral space station with representatives from dozens of worlds in attendance, marked the beginning of a new age. And when their first child was born, carrying the best traits of both species, the universe looked a little brighter, a little more hopeful. Love had indeed conquered all, bridging the vast distances between worlds and proving that some things truly are worth fighting for. In the end, she had been lost in the ashes of war until a human gave her hope. And in saving her, he had saved them all. The end.